Welcome to Grit, the Real Estate Growth Mindset podcast, hosted by Brian Charlesworth, founder of Sisu. Sisu provides growth automation software for real estate. You'll hear stories from real estate thought and technology leaders, team owners, and brokers on how they grew their business in a rapidly changing industry. You'll learn how to transform your brokerage and teams into a high-performing and analytics-driven business so you have a new, durable, competitive advantage against disruption in your market. So let's get right into it.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Grit podcast. I'm Brian Charlesworth. I'm the founder of Sisu. And, our new tagline is where real estate transacts online. And just because we're doing more and more and more around the real estate transaction every day, we're also focused on streamlining and automating the industry. And I love doing these podcasts because I get to have, these special guests come in that just all the leaders from the real estate industry, and not just the real estate industry, but coaching. And, we've had people in here from other industries as well, just top executives. And it's fun for me to learn, what works and what doesn't, and how people think differently about especially about the real estate industry. So anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, I'm here with Brandon Hedges, and Brandon is the COO of Sierra Interactive. He's been there about a year and a half now, and he oversees their strategy, their operations, and their metrics. And I think your background, you actually are an attorney, but I think it's been a while since you practiced that, since you built a real estate team for the last 20 years, Brandon. So Brandon has a real estate team that he left about a year and a half ago. His partner is still operating that team. And anyway, we'll dive into that a little bit today too. But Brandon, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I've been in real estate, around the real estate industry for a little over 20 years. Really got started, I think, the same way that a lot of real estate agents do, kind of by accident in one way or another. And I was really looking for something. I had about a 6-month gap in between a job I was working after undergrad and starting law school. And I had a really close friend that I went to undergrad with, Matt Barker, who had gotten into real estate. That was kind of his dream and what he'd always wanted to do. And we'd been in a lot of different sales businesses in the past. We had sold electronics and car stereos and been bartenders and had been in a lot of those kind of sales jobs over time, and knew that I was interested in it, but it wasn't necessarily the thing that I was super passionate about at the time. But got into real estate as a way that I thought maybe I could kind of pay my way through law school and make a little money while I'm doing it. And 3.5 years later or so, graduated from law school and worked at a law firm for a while, and realized that, man, it was a lot more fun selling real estate and building the business, and really looking at the opportunity that was out there at that time, kind of on the cutting edge of when technology was really rapidly expanding and changing. The world was starting to look different in terms of what could be for real estate and the business. And that's kind of where I came at it. So passed the bar. I'm a licensed real estate agent and attorney, which I think, if I was selling used cars, I think I'd have 3 or 4 of the top most hated jobs in terms of how people think about different professions. But that's something that's changing too. And that was another opportunity that I think I saw at that time, that real estate was becoming much more professional, and really people were looking at it as a business entity, which, really is kind of the heart and soul of how I know Sisu was founded, and, your passion for that part of it. So, that was my roots. And, 21 years later, working for a tech company that provides real estate tools to real estate agents. So it's been, definitely an interesting journey.
What year was that you got into real estate? What year was that?
2000. So
2000. And yep. then you went off and, ventured into practicing law.
Mm-hmm.
And then when did you come back into real estate?
It was 2004 when I really committed back to saying, this is what I'm going to do. This is really where I see the future being for me.
Okay. So at that time, you say people were building businesses. Were teams a big thing back then? Or was it more of, hey, I'm just, starting to think about building a team? I want to say Gary Keller wrote the MREA book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. I think it was 2003, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was all just starting at that time.
Okay. Were you at KW?
I was not. No, I actually started at Coldwell Banker and then moved into the Remax system after that.
Okay, so you Coldwell to Remax. So I'd love to hear like how that went as far as you selling real estate. Let's start with in 04 when you came back to real estate, and then building, and then what the evolution was to building a team, that's still here 20 years later or 16 years later. And it's interesting for me because I have a wife that, she was in real estate for a long time. And then, like 7 years ago, right after we got married, she was actually building a team at the time that we got married, but, she had maybe 5 agents. And so hadn't really gone from, I'm not in production anymore. Like that's where she is today with 40 agents, but there's an evolution there. I'd love to hear kind of how that went for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. And that really was the beginning of teams in real estate right around that time, that 03, 04, really a transition period. And for Matt and I, being business partners, we did that to help leverage our time, which, really at the core is how the team concept really started in real estate. And we did it because, just from a family standpoint, my wife worked weekends. She worked for a builder. Was in a sales model for 17 years. And so her days working were always, Wednesday through Sunday or Thursday through Monday or whatever it was. And Matt's wife worked more Monday through Friday. So we did it to kind of split up the schedule, make sure we had coverage, different nights, weekend days, that kind of thing. And that was just sort of our by choice and by necessity, we formed the real estate team as the two of us. And what we started doing, we were young, just a couple of years, at that point out of college. And our core business was with first-time homebuyers. And one of the things that we did at that time was send out postcards to apartment complexes offering first-time homebuying seminars. We're really trying to network in the community and get established that way. Just finding people to talk to about real estate and what showing them a rent versus own calculator and, all of those kind of things. And as we were doing that, we found there was an opportunity to do some of the same things using online tools. The changes in the internet and the way things were shifting at that moment, with IDX now becoming available, so we could show listings to the general public, which there's a lot of panic in the real estate industry at that moment that once we do this, then no one's going to need real estate agents anymore. There's not going to be any need for it. And I think we've had kind of the golden age of real estate ever since then. So that access to information and use of data is it's a pretty interesting thing once you make it available. So we started building websites and promoting ourselves online. Did a lot of things wrong, made a ton of mistakes, wasted a lot of money, built our own IDX platform on kind of an archaic framework, and really started dabbling into how we could do this in a virtual way in that digital marketing age. So we found that instead of sending postcards, we could connect with a lot more people online a lot quicker, and that was really where things started. And as that progressed and we began to generate more leads and more people to talk to, we found that we didn't have enough time, the two of us. So we hired our first team member right around that 2004 timeframe. And she's still with the team now. And then a couple more, within a year or so after that. And it was more out of necessity just to be able to help manage the lead flow that we had at the time. And it was very hands-on. We didn't have all the tools and resources we have now for navigating lead nurturing and lead cultivation. Certainly weren't that progressive at that time.
You didn't come together and say, hey, let's build a team. This is what Gary Keller is telling us to do. You probably hadn't read that book, being over at Coldwell.
No.
You were like, hey, we're going to build this technology, this IDX website. And I'm curious, were there IDX websites around back then, or which ones? And probably not in abundance like they are today, right?
No, there wasn't a lot of them. There were a few providers around, WordPress, there were some plugins, but it was the technology at that point. It wasn't super reliable. There was a lot of maintenance to it. We built our own IDX solution, and organized the database and had some programmers that we had working on that. And it was one of those things where it would work for a little while and then it would break, and then it would work for a little while and then it would break. And, it just wasn't as dependable or reliable as it is now. And the MLS boards weren't as sophisticated either, as far as help resources and how they were handling the IDX feeds, and moving to the RETS feeds eventually. It just wasn't there at that point.
So you guys took a completely different approach than I've heard before, which I love, because there's so many ways to do business, right? There's not one right way to do business. And so here you are trying to support this IDX website you built. And so you say, hey, we need to start hiring people. So how did it go from there? Like here you are. And how many agents are on that team today?
I think there's around 10 on the team. So it's not a huge team.
Okay.
At one point got up to around 25-ish and then kind of pared down. Part of that is just the involvement with Sierra and time and everything, but found that was kind of the right size for our group. And like you said, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Your wife is running a much larger organization that way from a team member and probably volume side. And that's great too. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So here you guys are going down the path and you discovered Sierra. I'm guessing you became a Sierra customer. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have gone and joined and started working as the COO over at Sierra. So tell me about how did you find Sierra?
So that journey, we kind of meandered our way between 2004 and 2014. And met Ben Pesco, the owner, founder, and CEO of Sierra Interactive. In 2014, we were looking for a provider for our real estate websites. I think we had, I don't even know how many at that time. We had a lot. And we had kind of a core group that we had some niche sites and our flagship site that we wanted to move and find someone that shared sort of a similar philosophy as we did. And that being, we weren't looking for a super custom, really customized version that needed to have, certain tools that were only developed for us. We really wanted to be with a company that had a vision for the future and was continually innovating and was going to be seen more as a partner with us. And that's really what we were looking at it. It wasn't a vendor. It was someone who was going to partner with us on that journey. And it was a small company and they were, had been in existence for, I think Sierra was founded in 2007. So they'd been established, we're in quite a few markets around the US and Canada. But we're really looking to grow too. And in moving our technology and moving our websites and platform over to Sierra, we really began to have a close working relationship with Ben at that time and kind of became advisors, somewhat in the company. And we were bouncing things off each other, having a lot of dialogue, talking about, what feature is going to be next and what's going to help us grow our business, because if it helps us grow our business and makes it better for our ability to leverage time, then chances are pretty good it's going to help somebody else too. And that's really where it began. And that relationship built over the course of several years to the point where I've kind of moved away from being, involved in the real estate team and working at Sierra now full time.
So that was 2014. And wow, I had no idea that they were founded or that you were founded in 2007.
Yeah.
So you've been around a lot longer than I thought. So, all right. So you become this like customer that Ben's bouncing ideas off of. And I totally get that. I bounce ideas off my wife every night. And, we have a number of other customers that anytime, like we're rolling out a few new things right now. And anytime we're doing that, I bring together a group of 5 to 10 customers and say, try this out. You guys are going to help us, make this good. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, you guys are bouncing these ideas off each other and finally, you end up at Sierra. So how does this happen? Like, that's like me going to one of my teams today and saying, hey, you don't really want to sell real estate. You don't want to be in the real estate business anymore, right? You want to be a part of Sisu.
Yeah. Come on over. Yeah. It's so that part of the journey, Sierra's been through multiple different evolution, obviously starting in 2007 and, we're in 2022 now. There's a lot of changes in the industry and technology and a lot of growth that's happened. In 2017, Sierra made a pretty intentional pivot to being more of the product offering that we have today. So, a little bit more of the kind of one platform solution, less customizable, but less customized upfront. And that was really the model up to that point, was a little bit more customized, but kind of built on the same platform. So it was expandable and upgradable. And we made a pretty large change in how that technology, get real deep into the weeds, but, really the code base and how we had evolved it to that point, to be in a position where we knew that shifting into the future, we needed to be faster. We needed to be able to innovate faster, and we needed to be able to push those updates to a large customer base quickly and to be able to support it. And that growth really began in 2017, which, I think is when Sierra probably started coming onto the radar in a lot more circles at that point, 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
Because we started expanding a lot quicker. And that was the point when, any company, you start expanding rapidly like that, you start looking for additional hands to help, you start taking on a little bit of water and need some additional hands. And that's where more of my time started being moved into, working with Sierra and helping out where I could, obviously running the real estate business and being involved in that day to day. There's only so much time left over. But that just kind of progressed to the point where we knew that we needed to really level up in terms of our leadership and how we were staging the company for the future, to reinvent that framework and to be able to be ready to scale the way that we have been.
So you guys have moved to this, did you move to agile development? Is that and are you guys doing product releases every 2 weeks now, or what does that schedule look like today?
Yeah, we are. So we're on a 6-week release schedule now on agile, and we're pushing other kind of smaller features or changes or upgrades in between, but there's a 6-week release cycle. And that's really been an eye-opening change. And that's all taken place in the last year or so. We brought in David Short, who's our head of product, and he came with a wealth of knowledge. We have some wonderful programmers, and obviously Ben is a genius in terms of his vision and our product-led growth. But being able to organize that in a way that we now work fully agile and are able to be more predictable in our time frame and our ability to scope projects and hit those marks is really unlocking a lot more opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sure. Great. So you said you brought additional hands in. How big is the company now? How many employees do you guys have?
We're a little over 50 in the U.S., and then we have some stationed overseas too. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And is that developers you have overseas, or?
Primarily, yep.
Okay. All right. So now it gets fun. So here you are at Sierra, and probably never thought you would be running a tech company. It's interesting how many people, my background is technology, and yeah. I discovered the opportunity for Sisu because of my wife's business, right? Jumping in and helping her for a little bit. You, on the other hand, were in real estate for 20 years, still are, right? And just kind of migrated into this Sierra Interactive platform that you fell in love with. And now you're a part of it. So there are a lot of CRMs in the real estate space. It's a pretty competitive market, right? So tell us more about what sets you guys apart. I know you talked a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear what really, why should someone be at Sierra versus anybody else in the industry?
Yeah. It goes back to some of those original conversations that we had with Ben and kind of the overall philosophy of Sierra is we have sort of an innate understanding that our customers are not carbon copies. And, like you were saying earlier, there's a lot of different ways to build a team to sell real estate. There's brokerages that look like teams. There's teams that look like brokerages. There's combinations of those. There's teams within teams. And they all have different challenges, and there's different places that they find themselves in scaling their business and growing it. And some get to the point where they say, this is as big as I want it to be, and I'm gonna kind of pivot and go a slightly different direction with it. Others are in that kind of constant, I want to build it bigger, and I want to expand, and I want to go into other markets and kind of rinse and repeat what I've learned here and take it somewhere else. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, and we understand on Sierra's side that we need to be there to support all of those different portions of that customer journey. Our motto is very simple. It's to help real estate agents close more deals. And there's a lot that goes into that. So having a philosophy at just a core that we want to be able to integrate and offer, deep partnerships with companies like Sisu, who are really there to help real estate agents take that ROI approach and to be able to look at it from a small business standpoint. And that's not every customer that we have. They're not all ready to be at that point, but the goal is that we offer them enough technology internally and that we have integrations with partners and strong resources that they're able to then bring within Sierra ecosystem and build their business to scale at whatever scale that is. They're not all the same, and it's not going to be done the same way for all of them. So rather than provide them an all-in-one platform that says, just come in, buy it, and you've got everything that you need right here, we want to provide them with opportunities to customize it and build it the way that they need to. And that it's just a different approach, I think, than some of our competitors have taken, and it's been a nice place within the industry for us.
Yeah. So you only really, if I were to ask you who your ideal customer is, what would that answer be?
Ideal customer is, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, but I think from our standpoint, our ideal customer is generally someone who's been in the business for a little while. They've gotten some sort of market fit, and they kind of have an idea of where they're positioned, and they have that mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset that they want to grow. Whether that's building a team, whether it's expanding into other niches, or going big, and they want to build it. They want to be their own independent brokerage. They want to form an EXP team and have eventually a mega team with multiple office locations. They just kind of have that mindset. And as you know from talking to a lot of real estate agents and living with one, that entrepreneurial just blood and the energy that's in their blood that's what really makes you, I think, an ideal customer for Sierra, because they have that want and that need to expand.
Yeah. So I know this, obviously you when you're growing a business and you're in growth mode, there are always challenges that come up, right?
If you've been enjoying Grit, please help us continue to grow the channel by leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with a friend. Now back to Grit.
I just want to share this because I think most people, whether they're running a real estate team or whatever, everyone knows there's challenges, but a lot of times when a company gets to the size of Sierra, or, people even think this was Sisu and we just launched 3 years ago, but, people think it's all easy, right? They only see the rainbows. They only see the positive stuff. So what are some of the challenges or pain points you guys are experiencing right now?
It's interesting. We talk about that a lot. That is, as I'm sure you're experiencing too, in a rapidly scaling and expanding tech company, or any company really for that matter. It's continuing to coach and develop your people, because that's really who we are. Sierra is our people, our team members and our customers. And the team members that have gotten us to the place that we're at right now are the ones we're relying on to get us to the next point, and we're filling in behind them, and we like to organically grow our team. So we're building up that knowledge, we're building up that experience, those relationships with customers and with each other in a way that we can continue to expand. And I listened to a podcast. It was Tim Ferriss was talking to Harley Finkelstein with Shopify, and he was talking about kind of a concept where he feels like he needs to reevaluate himself every year for the job. And I think he's had a couple of different roles, but I think he was currently as president of the company at that point. And it's that continuous expansion and looking at, what I did yesterday is not what we need today. And it's certainly not going to be what we need tomorrow. And that's really where we try to focus our time and energy is coaching our people to be the best that they can and to give them the opportunities to grow into other roles. Sometimes that's cross department. Sometimes it's taking a leadership role. Sometimes it's not leading people, but it's leading projects, or it's leading, different initiatives that they now have the experience and the background, and they're able to handle it. And we give them that opportunity for that growth.
Yeah, that's interesting. In talking about that podcast and how he does that every year. I think for me, one of the key things I focus on is making sure that I'm growing faster than my company is growing, right? Because
Right.
as a leader, you have to continue to grow in order to be able to continue to lead an organization that's growing, right? And so that's a great. I like that. Hey, once a year, I'm going to take a look and see, am I the right guy for that job, or am I making it so I am the right guy? Because the role of a CEO or any leader changes every year, right?
That's right.
Or even more frequently than that. So
it's humbling to take that look too,
yeah,
because it forces you to look in the mirror and say, am I really still the right one? And, if I don't feel like I am, what do I need to do to get better? And that's really, as leaders of any industry or any business, in the real estate industry and Sierra, whatever it is, to be able to ask those questions and really face that answer.
Yeah, I just read The Hard Thing About Hard Things last week, and it talks a lot about, the evolution of being like this little family to being a village, to being a city, and, to being a nation, right? And it just, what are the roles? And, it was interesting. It talked about how somebody's title might decrease, but they'll go from managing a team of 3 people to managing a team of 100 people. And now they're reporting up to somebody that's helping them do that. But, it's just, it's an interesting evolution. So, tell me about your vision of the future of real estate. So, you talked about even back in 2004, and I hadn't really thought about it going back that far, but I mean, people have been trying to prove that there is no need for a realtor for a long, long time, right? There are a lot of pro-realtor tech companies such as Sisu and Sierra Interactive, right? Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of anti-realtor tech companies that have been trying to put them out of business. I think there are fewer and fewer anti-realtor companies than there used to be. And a lot of the ones that there used to be are now pro-realtor, right?
Yeah.
So I think my take is the realtor is not going away, right? That's kind of been proven. My take is that the compensation for the realtor may change, and it's been attacked, but the best of the best haven't really been impacted on that. The people who have struggled with that have gone to being salary-based agents at this point. So anyway, I'd love to, that's kind of where we are today, right? Where do you see this all going?
That is an interesting question. And wow, it's been a ride even over the last 4 or 5 years here. Certainly, Sisu's kind of come on the scene. The industry, you're right. There's been this constant effort to let's find out a way to lessen the need for real estate agents, right? That's sort of been the approach. And it's a service industry, and it really is one that at its core, that service piece of it is really hard to replace without the people, and the people are the real estate agents. So, I think as we move forward, you're absolutely right. There's going to be changes in both compensation and how transactions are managed. I think, it used to be that when we were talking about just a few minutes ago, it used to be that it was a real estate agent in a town, however large that town was, whether it's a village or a city or a metropolis. But they kind of had their core group of people that they knew, and it was word of mouth and referral. And that was really, other than doing some newspaper advertising, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to expand and market to a wider audience, where now we have so much more opportunity from a digital marketing standpoint, social media. Agents are able to get the information out there in ways that they were not able to market themselves in the past. And that's really led to this expanse and growth of the team. And these are really little small businesses now, in some cases, pretty large businesses. And that I think has really changed the model also, because with a more organized and more established business practice behind the real estate service, I think a lot of these teams are able to offer better service to the customer. The end customer gets a better experience because of the technology and the people and the training and the resources that are available to these teams and these brokers and these organizations that have grown. And I think we're going to see that continue. So, consolidation, whether it'll be less and less individual real estate agents working on their own, more that are working in a team structure, and this kind of team within a team as a way to continue to evolve and expand and retain agents, I think is another thing we're going to see continue to evolve.
So I heard you say a lot about teams. I agree with you. I think teams have a clear advantage over independent individual agents, I should say. I didn't hear you talk a lot about the traditional brokerage. So you were at Coldwell and Remax. I would call those the traditional brokerage.
Very much.
Tell me what is the future for the traditional brokerage?
That's an interesting question. The brick and mortar real estate brokerage where the agents go there to transact their business, go there to work on files and have that office locale, I think is going to shift. We've seen a lot of virtual brokerages become established in the last few years. We've seen, all of our companies, Sierra included, being virtual now. And, it isn't necessary that we have an actual physical office space for us all to come together and work. And I think that's happening in the real estate industry too. And the brokers that recognize that, the ones that embrace it rather than fight it, I think are going to have more success. That's my sense.
Yeah, interesting. It's going to be an interesting 5 years for sure.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of change. When I say interesting, I think there's going to be a lot of change. All right. Is there anything that you want to give, any piece of advice? Let's talk about real estate teams, but I don't know. Our listeners are broader than that. So any piece of advice that you would want to leave with our listeners before I ask you a few personal questions?
Sure. I think embrace the data. We early on began sharing a lot of data with our sellers and our buyers. And I think those that really embrace that concept and are seen as the source of information for not only their customers, but their community and whoever they're marketing to. So it's little things like having you put a listing on the market, which I realize right now they sell in 5 minutes. In a lot of cases, they get multiple offers and you may not need a ton of data, but it's still important that you collect data. So putting a listing on the market, having a single property website for that you're gathering analytic data on, that you can share with your seller, having that data. So being reliant on that, having it available so you can make predictive and have predictive discussions with your seller is important. And that's important whether it sells in 5 minutes or it takes 60 days or longer. Because even if you get 4 offers right away, what does the data tell you? Should you have gotten 10? Did you expect to get 10? Or is 4 feel right? What does your traffic look like? Where is it coming from? Those kind of things. So I think embracing the data rather than being scared about it. I think a lot of agents sometimes feel like the more of that I share with my customers or, outwardly in marketing materials, it's going to make them not need me as a resource. I think it's the opposite. I really think those who hold the data and can explain it in a way that people understand are the ones that are seen as the experts. So, and they really are.
Obviously, I agree with you. Sisu was built 100% off giving people 100% of the data so they can make real-time business decisions. But you were expanding that. Sisu is built around let's share this data, know the data so you can manage your business, so you can manage your team, so you can make important decisions. Mm-hmm. You were talking about sharing the data with the client, though. So it's a little bit different.
It is.
And that's probably a little bit more. You guys are a little bit earlier up the funnel and you're sharing more of that information. Hey, saying you've got this information for the clients. Why aren't you sharing it with them? Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that it's, there's a lot of statistics that we as real estate agents in the industry have access to, for it's not only what things have sold for, but what are the trends, is the volume of listing inventory going up or down? Is it remaining flat? What's a balanced market? How does that all factor into pricing strategy or what should I offer? There's a ton of data and, understanding what are those key metrics that you can share, how they're meaningful to the customer or why they should be, and being able to communicate that to them.
Yeah. I just heard this weekend, and this is an interesting piece of data for me, the kind of data you're talking about. 6 months ago in Utah, you were getting 30, 40 offers per listing, just crazy stuff. I just heard, and then it slowed down over the holidays, and that would have been a great time to sell your house over the holidays and it's a great time to work if you were in real estate because you didn't have as many offers. But I just heard this weekend, one of my wife's agents slacked out to her and to the team that they made an offer on a home that had 70 offers on it. So, I mean, when you think about that, it's like, I don't know who that listing agent was, but hopefully that listing agent communicated properly with that owner. And, should they have been on the market long enough to get 70 offers? I mean, I don't know how long they were on the market, but as a realtor, it's key that you communicate, set proper expectations with your sellers or buyers, right? So
that's absolutely right. And it's crazy that some of the things that are happening right now, I never thought we would see them, and we are. Yeah. I never thought we'd see inventory go down from what it was 3 years ago, and it went down 2 years ago and last year. Still is.
Yep.
So
which is why prices have increased 20% year over year, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, okay. I've heard you talk about a few books, podcasts. I'd love to hear what your favorite source of learning is, whether that be, I don't know if you have a favorite book or a favorite podcast or whatever.
All kinds. I'm typically, if I'm in my car, which I'm not in as much as I used to be, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to talk radio and, getting information that way. I read quite a bit, and I kind of bounce between fiction and nonfiction. One of the books so two books that come to mind that I think were fascinating. One is Shoe Dog. So the Phil Knight story,
yep.
Probably. Yeah,
I love that book.
That one. It's a great book, and it's just a fascinating, look at Nike and the growth and sort of the misfit team that came together and weren't misfits. It's kind of an interesting story.
Well, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is like, it's an interesting story because you're hearing about his life, but at the same time, there are so many lessons in there. And I think most people would look at Nike today and just be like, oh yeah, Nike, it's this huge, massive, largest shoe company in the world, right? And when you hear the story, like what a challenge it was for them. How many times did they almost go out of business, right? I mean, crazy
all the time.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, it's crazy.
I'm glad you brought that up, but my opinion is what separates the successful from the unsuccessful. And Phil Knight is a perfect example of this. The unsuccessful, or let's just say the successful, they don't stop, right? They don't quit. They'll keep going. They have the grit to continue through anything. It's not about getting knocked down. It's about how you get up, right?
Yeah. So no, it totally is. And there's another book that if you haven't read it, it's a bizarre transition, but it's called The Dirt. It's the Motley Crue story. It came out a while ago, and I think they made a movie about it too. And I'm not a huge Motley Crue fan, and it wasn't something that I sought out. But I had a friend that handed it to me and said, he is a big Motley Crue fan, and he said, I think you'd like this book. And it's just a collection of stories from Motley Crue's history, and they're storied up and down and everywhere around kind of band over the years. But it's just a fascinating tale of dysfunction and perseverance. And I think to your point, obviously grit being something that's near and dear to you, I think that grit is really what they call it, the dirt, but they could have called it the grit. I mean, it's just the perseverance and how many times somebody either almost died or, and I think one case did die for a few seconds and came back, and the band broke up and came back together, and somehow they found a way to make it work, even though from the outside everything was a mess or dysfunction, or if you're looking at it through a different lens, they had it easy, they had it made, they were rock stars, and they were living that life. So it's just interesting, I think, when you read some of those stories that from the outside look like they're different than what maybe they are when you peel back the layers a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has it easy. Everybody has their own challenges, and I'm glad you brought that up. The Dirt, I was not familiar with that, but The Dirt, the grit, call it whatever you want, but it sounds like a book I need to read. So Thanks for sharing that. So what's your favorite place to vacation? It's always interesting for me to see you're from Minneapolis, right? And you live in the cold. So when you want to go somewhere, like just to enjoy yourself, where is that?
My wife would say to a beach, and I would say I need the snow. So I'm an out west. I love the mountains. I love to ski. Always have. Grew up doing that here on our little hills. I love being out in the mountains. So in your neck of the woods, and Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, wherever I can get to a mountain is where I'm going to head. So
you love the mountains.
That's my deal.
Nice.
We did go to Phuket, Thailand. So, if I had to pick a place that doesn't have mountains or snow, that would be it. Before we had kids, we traveled there spent about 10 days, which was fascinating. People, the culture, just the relaxed atmosphere, but it was a magical place. So that was a place I guess I could get by with that doesn't have any snow.
Well, I've never given a plug for Switzerland on this podcast before, but when you talk about mountains, I live in the mountains in Utah.
Yeah.
But nothing compares to the mountains of Switzerland. So
yeah,
if you haven't been to Switzerland and you love the mountains, go there when you can.
I've only been there in the summer, and it is definitely on the bucket list to be there in the winter. So someday when we can travel a little more freely.
Brandon, just a couple more questions here and we'll get wrapped up. What's your favorite thing to do in your spare time?
We have a little lake home and a boat. I love to be out on the boat in the summertime, just either taking the kids tubing or wakeboarding or, just hanging out and cruising around. It's probably one of my favorite things. And like I said, skiing too is another one. Those are two things where I can put down the phone and not have to be checked in and just feel like I'm relaxed. So
you are a man of the outdoors, a man of my heart.
Yeah.
I of course love the outdoors as well, or I wouldn't live where I do.
Yeah.
Last thing really is, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of Sierra? If somebody wants to learn more about Sierra Interactive, it really seemed for me, it seems like you guys really started getting popular right about the same time that Sisu launched into the industry. It went from, I had never heard of you guys to I was seeing you all over the place. So what's the best way for people to reach out to learn more?
SierraInteractive.com is the best place for you to connect with us. Reach out that way. It's a great way to get more information or connect with anyone from our support or sales team. All the information is there on the website. And yeah, that was, being more and more involved with Sierra over the last 5 or 6 years. As time went on, we started seeing a lot more of Sisu, started running into you and your guys at different conferences and stuff around. And yeah, it does kind of feel a little bit like we grew up at the same time.
Yeah, it's been fun. Well, again, congrats on all your success. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Again, listeners, thank you for being here for another episode of the Grit Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast. If you have an interest in a free 7-day trial of Sisu, go to sisu.co, sisu.co. Make sure that you use the coupon code GRIT, that's GRIT, to waive all your setup fees and receive a 10% discount on your subscription. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to subscribe, search GRIT, the real estate growth mindset, on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Take care.